Okay, this lesson is for Microsoft Excel to review just some of the basic operations, the basic things that you did in Computer Tech Apps. First thing is the toolbar here. There's a lot of options that you can use in the toolbar, or you can highlight things and right-click and access many of the same features. I'm a right-click kind of person, so I'm going to do a lot of that with the right-click. All right, first thing is just some typical formatting stuff. And if you've used any program over the years, you're used to bold, making the font bigger, centering, etc. And all those features are right here. If you wanted to bold everything and center everything, all those features are up here. If you needed to expand this section, of course, this way. If you wanted it to fit, you could just double click and it closes down on the cell. Those are just some basic formatting. The box around the borders for these, if you wanted to put borders, you would right click and go to Format Cells and go to Border, and you can outline and put lines or boxes around everything. That's in case you wanted to put a table in your report. Now the things that you really need to see are summation formulas and bar graphs and pie graphs. So if I were curious to know how many first period students took this test, I got two. I mean, I could take a calculator and add 11 plus 9 plus 6. Or you can use a formula. You can just highlight these cells, including the one you want to put the formula in. Go to Insert, go to Formula, and then go to Auto Sum, the little tab here, and you got many options. We're going to use the sum. And do you notice the symbol there? That's a sigma, right? So the sum. Now that added that 11,96004. Then I'm wanting to also add the second period and fifth period and see what happens there. So I can just copy that cell by hitting Control C. I like shortcuts. I like the hotkeys. So Control C. Then go over to this cell, Control V. That pastes, paste, paste, and it is adjusting the formula. Control V. Control C, and this is Microsoft Word, Windows Explorer, Internet Explorer. Control C, always copy. Control V, paste. That's one use of the formula. The other use of the formula, another way to do the summation, is if I wanted to know how many people made A's in all classes, which I do, that's something I look at, I'd want to add the 11, put 2, 22, 0, and put it here. So to do that, first of all, I'm going to put borders around this too. And then I'm going to insert a formula by hitting equals. Let me get out of the equation there. So this one should be 29. What happened here? I think I double clicked on, okay. Control copy, control paste, thank you. Yeah, it didn't have that formula in there. Now, to add, you could also hit equals, sum, open a parentheses and type your own formula in. You want to add the 11, so hit 11. Now hold the control button down. You have to hold the control button down while you select this cell, and that cell. And then close your formula by closing the parenthesis. And now that formula is adding those cells for you. If you copy that and then paste it here, it will add the B's for you. It will adjust the formula to only add B4, D4, F4, etc. And so forth. Copying the formula that was adding the column and pasting it. Whoops. Control Z, by the way, is a shortcut to undo something. Control copy, Control paste, Control C, and Control V. That's got all that. Anyways, that's kind of the boring stuff. The bar graphs and the pie graphs, that's what you're going to use. That's what you're going to use in your paper. But you have to have the table, like I have up here. You have to have that table created so that your wizard, your bar graph wizard, your pie graph wizard can use the data. All right, so I'm going to look at all classes. So I'm going to take the A through F and the numbers that go with it, and we're going to first make a bar graph. It's really this easy. You highlight A through 5 here. You go up to the insert column graph or bar graph, and I don't like the 2D columns. I like the 3D. They just look better. And then there it is. I don't like to have the series thing here, the key. There's no sense in having it, so I'll delete that. Chart tools, I'm going to go to layout and chart title to put a title. So this is benchmark number 3, all classes. Then let's see, I also want the reader to know what those numbers are. So I'm going to add labels by clicking on the bar and then hit right click, add data label. And that's a chart that you might would use in your paper. We'll talk about how to put it in your paper some other time. You also might want to look at this as a pie graph, because this same data, when looked at as a bar graph, so highlight the same way versus looking at it as a pie graph, it tells different stories. So we're going to go to pie graph, use the wizard, and there's your pie graph. I don't like having a legend on the right, so I delete the legend, and instead I add the labels here. So add data labels, and I don't like the numbers for a pie graph. What do you normally see with a pie graph? You normally see percents. So I'm going to right click here and format the data labels, unselect the value, and select percent. And I'm also going to select category name, because that's going to put an A, B, C, D next to that percent. Close, and there's the pie graph. We want to put a title on it, go up to layout, chart title, and then put a title on it. Benchmark number 3, all classes. And depending on what you are wanting to tell the reader, you'll choose between the different graphical displays. Do you use a bar graph? Do you use a pie graph? There's other options. We're going to look at a couple more options on the next sheet, but only a couple more. But depending on what you're trying to tell the reader in your paper, you got to choose the right display. So I like the one on the left for this situation. I like the one on the left because I like to see the percents, because I want to know what's the percent of people that made A's or B's, because that's a college-ready mark. So that's why I like the one on the left. I like the one on the right, too, because it shows the trend that more people are getting A's and B's and a few C's. But then this has limits, too, because these A's, B's, and C's, I wonder how close they were to getting an A if they were B's. And a lot of you know it was one question away, or 2 questions, right? So that's something else you'd want to look into. But let's look at the last sheet. I took first period and all of their benchmarks over the course of the year. And I first had them just listed out side by side up here, and then realized, you know what, it'd be nice to compare the trends to see if the number of A's is getting more or less, B's more. I mean, you can kind of see the trend in the numbers of just the table, right? But it's not as impactful as a picture would be. And there's 2 options to show that comparison. Option 1, what type of graph would best illustrate this? Option 1 is a comparative bar graph. So you'd have 2 bars side by side, or 3 bars side by side for the A's, for the B's, for the C's. The other option is a line graph that shows the up or down pattern of those. So let's build both of those. First thing I had to do was take the separate data here, here, and here, and put it into this table so that the wizard could take all that information highlighted, and literally, once it's highlighted, comparative bar graph is the same one we used earlier right here. And there it is. It's that simple once you have the data put in the right order in your table. Well, what also might be helpful in this picture for a reader, you can look to the left and see what it's about, the number. It might be helpful to have the data labels for the different bars. So what I'm doing is selecting each bar, right-clicking, and going to add data labels. Would the key be beneficial for this one? Yeah, so you might want to leave the key on that one. All right, so that's the comparative bar graph, and then you could put a title on it the same way we did before. Put a title there. The other way to represent this data would be a line graph. So we'll select the same data, go up to the wizard, and insert a line graph. And we'll use the one that has little dots for each point. And let's see, is that what we were hoping to show? Does that show the data any better than the bar graph? Or does it show it worse than the bar graph? To me, it's worse, right? To you, it's worse, right? All right. Well, watch this. When we select the data that we selected and we switch the X and Y axis, I think that'll be what we were after. So I'm going to select the chart, right-click, select data, and right here I'm going to switch the row and column and hit OK, and see if that's more like what we were hoping to get out of our line graph. The trend of A's, the trend of B's, the trend of... It helps, but I still, I'm like you, the looks you're giving me. The bar graph's a little bit of a better choice to display that, right? All right, but that's your options. You have those options. You can add data labels to this. Right-click, add data labels. You can choose to keep your key or delete it. You know, and I'm sure can do a lot more things than I can even do with making the graphs look better. Okay. But the last thing we need to look at, move these out of the way, is statistics in general. Benchmark 1, 2, 3 A's. Let's say we wanted to show the reader a trend. I want you to choose between two graphs of what you would do. Here's the first one. Insert line graph. Here's the first one. The second one, insert line graph. And I'm going to change something. I'm going to go to the axis, the major axis, and I'm going to wrong button. I'm going to format the major axis. Still wrong one, sorry. That's the right one. No. There we go, format axis. Thank you, sorry. And change it from auto to fixed, and I'm going to change it to 12. And I want you to look at those two and tell me which one would you use. Well, for me, it depends on what you're trying to say. Let's pretend that these two pictures, the one on the left and the one on the right, the ones labeled A and A, let's pretend they weren't benchmark numbers. Let's pretend they were a weight loss program. So you're opening up a magazine, and a weight loss program is showing one of these two. If you're the owner of the weight loss program, which of those two graphs are you going to show? Why? Because it looks like the change is much greater. That's That's using statistics to mislead statistics. Now, is it illegal or is it, is it wrong? That's kind of we can get into a discussion on that about whether it's not illegal, no, because that's the data, all right? And if you're trying to say that this product decreases, then you want to use the graph on the left, right? Which is also to say, and I guarantee you can go into the library right now and pull a magazine off the shelf, and you can find a graph somewhere in there that has like that weight loss thing, where one of the bar graphs is about 5 inches tall, and the next bar is about 1 inch tall. But when you actually compute the percent change that we've done in here, it's like a 3% change, maybe a 5% change. Whereas if you looked at the 5 inches versus 1 inch, you'd think, well, you're losing over half your weight. It's just a misleading statistic. It's a misleading graph. You got that option, though. If you're trying to persuade your audience, the graph on the left is a lot more persuading than the one on the right. Okay? All right, that's it. That's the review. We'll finish this.